Hello, everyone, and welcome to Behind the Lens, a podcast exploring the stories of media professionals who have shaped the way we see the world. My name is Andrew Johnson, a student here at Temple University's Klein College of Media and Communication, and today we're joined by a former professor of mine, a veteran broadcaster, an educator, and the general manager of Temple TU Television, Professor Paul Gluck. With decades of experience in newsrooms, media consulting, and academia, Professor Gluck has not only witnessed the evolution of media, but has played a pivotal role in shaping it. Let's dive into his journey.
You'd want to be neat.
All right, well, we're hot. So first off, I just want to thank you again for joining me today.
My pleasure and my privilege.
And I just want to start off from the beginning. Can you tell me a little bit about when you realized you wanted to pursue a career in media and broadcasting, and was there like any specific event or any specific person that might have ignited this?
I don't know that there was any one event. It was a series of events. I'm a baby boomer. I was raised pretty much, came to some awareness in the 60s. And it was one earth-shattering seismic event after another. Things like the Cuban Missile Crisis, where we thought the world was going to get detonated one Friday night. The assassinations of President Kennedy, his brother Senator Kennedy, Martin Luther King, social upheaval that we were experiencing. And I saw it all of it through the prism of television. And that sort of somehow helped me understand that if I could witness these things, if I could share it with others, that would be a career that I would find useful. Someone else might find value in it, and I had a pretty good idea I could enjoy it. Like a lot of other baby boomers, I grew up fascinated with the human spaceflight program, and I watched all of that unfold on television. I also knew that as an overweight child, I wasn't going to get a shot at being an astronaut, since that they didn't build spaceships in portly sizes. Couldn't do math. That's the other reason I'm in this business. I have no clue about math. But those events and the way television captured them for me and captured my interest.
You've worked in very high-pressure environments like KYW-TV or WCAU-TV. What was it like having to manage these newsrooms during breaking news events, like some of them that you just mentioned?
It was electrifying in breaking news. It was horrifying coming to the realization that decisions I made would impact people's lives when I dealt with employees. I was happy to try and be helpful to the audience in any way I could. There is a gravity to the mission of managing at KYW or at WCAU about 100, 110 people who were the news staff, and making sure that we were certainly on point in accuracy and ethics, in the way we communicated, the style of our communication, the substance of it. So it was, if you stopped and thought about it, it could be a little overwhelming, but it was also like being a starship captain. And I know that sounds romantic and maybe a little condescending, but once I pointed my finger like Captain Picard and said, engage, we did. And in the course of a day, the ability and the privilege of telling the stories of what happens in this community, in this country, and around the world was electrifying to me.
I feel like that's why a lot of people get into media, is because they have a specific story they want to tell, and I think it's really amazing that you were able to direct the ship in a sense of where you wanted the stories to go.
In the seminal sense, I'm a producer. I always will be. Best jobs I ever had, even though I was a news director and a general manager. The best jobs I've ever had were as a producer or an executive producer, because you were there kind of gathering and constructing and shaping the content in ways that you hoped were helpful to the people who were watching and interesting and engaging. And that was enormous fun. And you don't, it is not lost on you that there is a sense of responsibility that comes with that, that you can't check out on that. You can go on vacation, they will find you, but you can't check out on that responsibility.
So after your years in the industry, you kind of made this transition towards academia, obviously. I kind of just want to pick your brain a little bit about what motivated you in that shift and how your industry experience shaped you in your approach in teaching and mentoring students like myself at Temple.
Okay, there are a couple of questions there, and I'll try to give you one good answer.
Yeah.
Hope it's as good as the question. It wasn't an intentional turn to teaching. I had been the station manager. I was sort of running all of the content and production and other things at WHYY, television, radio, and at that point, web. It was pre-social. We had this enormous economic recession in front of us. I knew that because public television exists on the kindness of strangers, gifts from people like you, to PBS and NPR, that in a bad economy, it would be hard to create new content. I didn't go looking for anything, but a friend called me and said there's an opportunity at Drexel to teach and to run a resource center where we can help people understand more about media. I've always been a test pilot without a helmet, so I figured I'd take a run at that. Did a year or so at Drexel and tried to figure out if I had anything useful as a teacher that I could offer. And everything I did, what I discovered is a lot of us certainly in television news, sometimes have imposter syndrome. Like, I don't know, they're going to find out what I don't know, I hope I'm good enough for, and once they do, they'll fire me. And when they fire me, I don't know how to do anything else. Well, if you've produced a newscast, if you've worked with creative people, if you've been in that environment, you can do almost anything. That's what I learned. I was at Drexel for a year and a half. Lou Klein was kind enough to ask me if I was interested in an opportunity here. Then he facilitated it, and I came here to do two things, to teach in media studies and production. And the thing that really intrigued me, even a higher level, though to me it was pretty heady to teach here because I had gone here and one of my sons had gone here, was the notion that I could compete to launch TUTV, the university's television station. And it occurred to me, everything that I did as a television producer and manager not only informed what we've done at TUTV, but as a teacher. I used to look at my classes, although I'm not sure you guys who were sitting there looked at it this way. I didn't just sort of have a lesson plan, I produced each class. I wanted to make sure there were reasonable visuals that supported everything that we did. We tried to have guests who could, fill out sort of the story of what we were talking about. So my TV life informed a lot of my life.
And I took your history of electronic media course, and
let me apologize now. I'm sorry.
It was an amazing
no
course.
Rebates, but I apologize.
I think you did a great job at highlighting the ways in which media, like the landscape, has changed over the years, and how dramatic it really has been. And from your perspective, what is the biggest challenge kind of facing the industry today, and how can aspiring professionals kind of prepare for that?
Well, I think that it's a double-edged sword. I think on one side, we're seeing that the audience is so fractured. There's so many different options that you really don't have the same, if you will, throw weight on any one platform. It used to be that broadcast radio was everything, then broadcast TV was everything, and then social, and now all of these other platforms, from streaming to all sorts of what I like to call boutique apps like WhatsApp, and are competing for your attention, your time, and sometimes your money. That's a huge challenge. The other challenge is not getting lost in all this magnificent technology. It's remembering that it's all about content and how you deliver the content. I'm all for your phone as a primary source of entertainment, but I don't know if I really want to see a Marvel movie or the Super Bowl on my phone. Maybe I want to see it on broadcast TV or cable or on a streaming service, assuming that, unlike some football games last year, the streaming service can actually deliver it without buffering on every play. But I think reminding yourself that no matter how it's delivered, storytelling is everything.
I feel like a lot of places have shifted towards creating a final product that sells rather than the experience of it at the end of the day, and I feel like that in the end makes bad art. So
I think you're right. I don't think it makes good art at all. I don't think it makes good television. I don't think it makes. My assumption, unlike so many, is that television is art, and we'll leave that there for another debate. But thank you for that. But No, I think so many, and by the way, the audience has some responsibility here. They're the ones out there buying all these different platforms and not fully understanding that they may not be getting the best for their money if, for instance, I happen to enjoy 2 series that are on a platform called Peacock. Old episodes of a mystery called Columbo, and new episodes whenever they get around to making them of Poker Face, Natasha Lyonne. They're both interesting mysteries that have a sort of comic lacing to them. Okay. I still watch those on the 45-inch flat panel in my living room. I don't want to watch either of them on my phone on the train unless there's a good reason to. And I do think we have to think about technology's impact on the art we make, and even on the news we do. And if the technology is best facilitating a 13-second clip, what are we really saying in 13 seconds? That could be useful to the audience. By the same token, you pick the music you love. I'd like more than 11 seconds of whatever music I love.
Exactly. So I really wanted to ask this question. So you've worked on preserving vintage television programming.
Yeah.
And why has preserving media history been so important to you? And what's one piece of vintage content that you think everyone should go and see?
I think the vintage content is important to me for a couple of reasons. As somebody who looks forward, I love the idea that we can preserve what's behind us because that helps us understand what could be in front of us. I'm a big believer in that. And I hope I convey it that way when I teach those things. In terms of the one thing you should see, I don't know that there's one thing. I think there's one thing every person has to decide they want to see. For me, there is an old variety special, and variety to your generation, because you've never seen real variety shows, are, an hour of music and dance and comedy sort of held together by a very weak central theme. There's a show called An Evening with Fred Astaire. He was a Hollywood superstar, sang and danced, and he did a landmark special for NBC in 1958 when I was 3 years old. And once a year, as a member of the Paley Media Center, when I'm in New York for my wife lets me go to New York for a day and refuses to go with me and sit at the Paley Media Center, and I look at old stuff. I always look at the Fred Astaire special because it's beautifully executed, the music is great, the comedy's funny. So for me, that's one show I think everybody should
take a look for. All right.
By the way, the other things, I think, just as a responsible citizen, I think everybody should see the silvery black and white video of Alan Shepard's launch into space. He was the first American who went into space on a Mercury Redstone rocket. He was aloft for 15 minutes, but it was the first time an American got into space. The electrifying moment of 2 human beings, at this point, I don't care about their flag, setting foot on the moon. That night is crystalline clear in my eye from 1969, and the evening that the Berlin Wall came down. Everybody should see a little piece of that.
Well, I know definitely some people will check that out. I know I will. And then we're running low on time, so I just want to give you one last question.
Be short.
For the students aspiring to enter the media industry, what's one piece of advice you wish someone had given you when you were just starting out?
If you're smart about it, you can shop for your boss. You can shop for the company where you want to work. Don't jump up and down at the first job. And if you feel horribly desperate, felt horribly desperate. In my little circle of Temple friends, I was the last of the 5 of us to get a job. Over the years, they worked for me, I worked for them, we're still together, we were at each other's weddings, but I felt such pressure because I was the last of them to get employed. You don't have to, you want to be motivated, but not by the fear that you're never going to be employed. Have confidence in your ability and look carefully at the companies for which you'd like to work.
I think that's a good way to end it. Thank you for coming on the show today and for sharing your incredible journey with us. Your story is a testament to the power of passion, adaptability, and mentorship, and in the ever-changing world of media. Until next time, keep telling stories that matter.